We live in a world where crossing oceans takes hours, not months, where massive steel birds glide effortlessly across the sky, where traveling from one end of the planet to the other is just routine. But it wasn't always this way. Not long ago, the idea of flying, truly flying, was a fantasy, the stuff of myths and legends. Humans had dreamed of wings for centuries, but it took two quiet, determined brothers from Dayton, Ohio, to turn that dream into reality. They weren't scientists. They weren't rich. They didn't even finish college. And yet in December of 1903, Orville and Wilbur Wright did something that changed the course of history forever. Who were the Wright brothers? How did two self-taught inventors manage to do what no one else could? And how did their flying machine reshape our world? Welcome back to 1,000-Year Personalities. And in this episode, we take to the skies with the Wright brothers, the pioneers of flight. Wilbur Wright was born in 1867, and Orville followed in 1871. They were raised in a close-knit, educated household in Dayton, Ohio. Their father, Milton Wright, was a bishop and a man of books, and their mother, Susan, had a knack for mechanics. She built toys and gadgets and wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. From a young age, the Wright boys were curious. They were builders, tinkerers, dreamers. One day, their father brought home a toy helicopter powered by rubber bands. It was simple, but it could fly. That little toy didn't just entertain the boys, it lit a spark. They never forgot the feeling of watching something man-made take to the air. As they grew up, the brothers tried their hand at a number of things. They published a newspaper. They opened a printing press. But their big break came with bicycles. In the 1890s, bicycles were all the rage. The Wrights opened the Wright Cycle Company, where they built, sold, and repaired bikes. This wasn't just a job, it was a laboratory. Bicycles taught them balance, control, and mechanical precision. They learned how to build frames, craft gears, and understand the importance of stability, all of which would later translate into the world of aviation. While the world saw two bike mechanics, the Wrights were already thinking about something much bigger. The idea of human flight had fascinated people for centuries. From Da Vinci's sketches to tragic daredevils leaping off towers with wings strapped to their backs, many had tried, all had failed. But in the late 1800s, gliders were starting to show promise. One name in particular inspired the Wrights: Otto Lilienthal, a German aviation pioneer who had flown over 2,000 glider flights before dying in a crash in 1896. His death shook the aviation community, but it sparked a fire in the Wright brothers. They decided to pick up where Lilienthal left off. The Wrights were methodical. They didn't just build, they researched. They devoured everything available on flight. But they soon realized much of the existing data was flawed. So they built their own wind tunnel. In their workshop, they tested over 200 wing shapes, measuring lift, drag, and control. They didn't rely on luck. They relied on science. By 1900, they were ready to test real gliders. They chose a remote, windy location called Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, a place with steady winds, soft sand for crash landings, and privacy from the public eye. There, between the dunes, they began testing gliders. The progress was slow, crashes were frequent, but they learned something new every day, and slowly, they were getting closer. The Wrights discovered that three things were essential to flight: lift, propulsion, and control. Others had focused only on lift and power, but the Wrights understood. Without control, flight was useless. So they invented a system called wing warping, which twisted the wings to allow the plane to turn and bank. It was the first form of aerodynamic control. Next, they needed power. Since no suitable engine existed, they built their own, a lightweight 12-horsepower engine, custom-made with the help of their mechanic, Charlie Taylor. They attached it to a biplane they called the Flyer. On December 17, 1903, with Orville at the controls and Wilbur running alongside, history was made. The Flyer lifted off and stayed airborne for 12 seconds, covering 120 feet. It was short, it was clunky, but it was the first controlled, powered, sustained flight in human history. You'd think the world would erupt in celebration, right? Wrong. Newspapers largely ignored the story. People thought the Wrights were exaggerating or outright lying. After all, they were just bicycle mechanics. But the Wrights didn't care about headlines. They cared about progress. Over the next few years, they refined their designs. By 1905, they had a fully functional flying machine that could fly for over 30 minutes, perform turns, circles, and even land smoothly. Now, the world started paying attention. In 1908, the Wrights took their plane to France, a country buzzing with aviation enthusiasm. Skeptics gathered to watch. When Wilbur soared into the sky, circling effortlessly above the crowd, gasps turned into thunderous applause. Suddenly, the Wrights were international celebrities. They signed contracts with governments, demonstrated flights across Europe and America, and formed the Wright Company to build aircraft. Their success was no accident. It was the result of years of patience, failure, and relentless problem solving. And the power of persistence. They weren't backed by universities or funded by governments. They were ordinary men with an extraordinary vision. They questioned existing knowledge. They ran their own experiments. They learned from their failures. And when the world laughed, they flew. Their legacy isn't just in the aircraft we see above us. It's in every inventor's garage, every startup's basement, and every dreamer who believes they can change the world with a crazy idea. In a letter, Wilbur once wrote,
"If we worked on the assumption that what is accepted as true really is true, then there would be little hope for advance."
The Wright brothers didn't just fly. They lifted humanity into a new age. They proved that with curiosity, courage, and a bit of wind in your favor, the sky is not the limit. Thank you for watching 1,000 Year Personalities. If this story inspired you, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And let us know, which other pioneers should we cover next? Because sometimes, the people who shape the next 1,000 years are the ones who dared to believe that the impossible